Story 1: Big Fish. I sobbed all the way home from the theater in the full depths of an existential crisis due to my inevitable mortality and the mortality of all I loved. I cried for the first time watching my girl and have cried many times since. The only time I have ever seen my husband of 22 years cry is during a viewing of Roma. Yes, people we have loved have died since our relationship began, and nothing. For births of children, nothing. Many other hardships and setbacks, and, you guessed it, nothing. Story 2: Moulin Rouge. And it was not just a few tears like Lord of the Rings. I was sobbing in front of all my friends. Story 3: probably Gran Torino. So much sadness packed into one movie. Widowhood, racism, violence, poverty, terminal illness, and despair. It was uplifting at points, but the underlying themes are heart-wrenching. Story 4: Toy Story 3. I can't even make it past the opening scene, if it is not because of any of the scenes where a dog dies. Story 5. The Bridge to Terabithia was a tearjerker for me. I saw it when I was younger, but it still made me feel emotional after watching it. Story 6. I never cried in any movie except Life is Beautiful. Seeing the tank coming at the end, just as the father promised his son, really got to me. Story 7. About Time. I thought it was going to be a cheesy romantic comedy. Tim and his father's story affected me deeply, especially after my mother had recently passed away. Story 8. The movie Pearl Harbor, 2001. Showing when the Arizona sank and all the men were trying to get out, tore me apart. Story 9. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. I cried so hard, I gave myself a terrible headache. I have cried during many movies, several named here already, but The Boy in the Striped Pajamas has been the only movie where I cried so hard I hurt myself. Story 10. Old Yeller. They played it in elementary class back in the 1970s. I had to go home. I couldn't stop crying. Story 11. Honestly, the original Pokemon film, even now as a full-grown adult, I cannot watch it without setting off the waterworks. I introduced my child to the film, and she looked at me sideways and said, "Why are you crying, Daddy?" It's funny. I never wanted to throw my child until that day, laughing my fat off. Story 12. Indian Horse. The depths of what the Catholic Church and Canadian government subjected children to for over 100 years was appalling. My dad survived residential school. I was angry and crying during the movie. Suddenly, I was asking aloud what they did to him. Condemn all. Those Canadians who think it is just about a payout. Listen to their stories. Try to picture your children being loaded into the back of a truck and taken away. Thousands of children never made it home in the United States and Canada once they left for boarding or residential school. Story 13. Definitely District 9. Themes of xenophobia, racism, and social injustice explored through the lens of science fiction. Story 14. Phantom of the Opera. I was 13 years old and had not watched any even mildly emotionally devastating movies. I cried so hard that I lost my sense of taste and smell for several hours. Story 15. The movie Rocketman is about Elton John. I struggled to get sober for over 10 years without success. Shortly afterward, I became serious about it, started attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, and now I am over 5.5 years sober. I no longer miss drinking. God is great, but you really need to want it. Story 16. A Star is Born with Lady Gaga. If you are in a long-term committed relationship, that last song is powerful. Story 17. Inside Out. The scene when the girl is in crisis and all her islands start crashing down. I literally thought, what is that wet stuff on my face? Before I realized that I was fully weeping. It is the best illustration of depression I have ever seen, and it hit hard. Story 18. Coco. I saw it in the theaters. At the time, my mother was dying of cancer and my grandmother had full-on dementia, so it really hit close to home. Less than a year from its release, I lost my mother, my grandmother, and my grandfather. Story 19. I remember watching With Honors, 1994, as a kid starring Brendan Fraser and Joe Pesci. I do not know why, but it really resonated with me and I was crying my eyes out. Story 20. A Man Called Otto, the scene with the bus, oh my goodness, just the whole combination of the bus scene, Otto in real time in his living room and the soundtrack. I have watched that movie 3 times and that scene moves me every single time. Story 21. A Walk to Remember and Brokeback Mountain are tied. The first, I was crying the whole time, and during one commercial break, I ran to my mom's room to tell her to watch it with me. When she turned around, she was also crying and was about to get up and come tell me to watch the movie with her. Brokeback Mountain, I think I was about 13 or 14, and I thought, haha, gay cowboy. But then my heart was broken. Story 22. The Perks of Being a Wallflower. I did not think anyone noticed me. I felt that line deep in my soul. Story 23. During the first 15 minutes, my husband had to stop the movie and hold me while I cried. Even now, I am tearing up just writing this. Story 24. What dreams may come. If you are in a relationship or have children, and especially if you or someone you love struggles with mental health, you will cry. Story 25. Schindler's List and Lion. My girlfriend at the time had to write an essay on Lion. We watched it together and cried. Then, when she was rewatching clips to write her essay and started crying, I started crying too. My God, what a story! Story 26. Antoine Fisher, Mystic River, Mr. Holland's Opus, A Dog's Purpose, Steel Magnolias, We Live in Time, The Passion of the Christ. All of these movies made me cry intensely. Story 27. What Dreams May Come. I had seen it before multiple times and sure, it made me cry, but this one day I just ugly cried from beginning to end. Every time I thought I could calm down, it started up again. It was exhausting. Honorable mention is extremely loud and incredibly close. It was just one scene and I cannot even tell you what was so sad about it. But I sobbed so hard at 3 a.m. that my brother came into my room to ask if I was okay. Story 28. She made me cry like a little child. The last scene of Forrest Gump, where he asks if his son is like him. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. The Fox and the Hound, 34 years old. And if you turn that on, I'll smash the tape. My heart can take no more. That episode of Black Mirror called Nostalgia. I'm very emotional, and I'll defend myself if you make fun of me for it. Probably sobbing the whole time. Story 29. Artificial Intelligence. Artificial Intelligence. Not like the artificial intelligence of today, but the Steven Spielberg movie. That forest scene. Story 30. The Last Unicorn. Even as I type it, my chest feels heavy, and I get a little anxious feeling. The bull and the unicorn and the showdown. When she had to turn into a human in order to escape the bull. Pan's Labyrinth. She takes the bullet at the end and dies, but she becomes a princess and is with her father. Bittersweet. Beaches. Every time. The young lady who played young Bette Midler was very charismatic and did a great job. But the friend died at the end, and you know the responsibility Bette has now of taking care of her daughter. She is an instant mom. It is heavy and heartwarming, and you are crying for the daughter, the mom, Bette. Just everybody. Steel Magnolias, of course. Need I say more? Tears through laughter is my favorite emotion. The boy in the striped pajamas. It has been a while since I have seen this, but I remember crying through this movie. Titanic. I know. I am sorry. But yes. Story 31. The Perfect Storm. That scene when George Clooney, having lost his entire crew, is going down with his ship and looks up to see the sky one last time destroyed me. I fully sobbed in the theater. Story 32. Babe. Not because it is sad, but when I was a toddler, I would start sobbing when the credits came on until an adult rewound it so I could watch it again. I was a strange child. Story 33. Too many. I'm emotional. Any movie where the animal dies, so I stopped watching. Steel Magnolias. Terms of Endearment. Edit to add beaches. Story 34. Million Dollar Baby is very sad. Especially the scene where the child with special needs becomes a victim of brutality in a boxing match. Story 35. Schindler's List. Watched it at home alone so nobody would see me ugly cry and produce an abundance of mucus. Story 36. 8 Below. Tuesdays with Maury, Marley and Me. The Fault in Our Stars. Sweet November. The Last Song. Dear John. A Walk to Remember. Me Before You, I Still Believe, Click, A Star Is Born, Winter's Tale, Story 37, Marley and Me. I watched it once with my whole family, and the movie left me, my sister, and my grandmother crying. I have not watched it since. Story 38, Wolf Children. I do not want to spoil it, and I cannot really explain it without spoiling it. But I think it was mostly the surprise of it. Something happened that was just so dry, sudden, and somewhat understandably remorseless that it completely devastated my wife and me. We were dating at the time. It is otherwise just a kind of weird anime about the hardships of parenting. I am not a big anime person, but this was recommended to me, and I was just gutted. See also Grave of the Fireflies, obviously. Story 39. When I was young, back in the 1960s, when we only had a few television channels, there was an ultra-high frequency channel that would show old movies all the time. Whenever Imitation of Life, starring Lana Turner, came on, my mom and I would sit on the sofa with a box of tissues between us and just sob. I haven't seen that movie in years, not even on Turner Classic Movies, but now it is a cherished memory of my mom. Story 40. The Joy Luck Club. I am an American-born Chinese daughter of an immigrant Chinese mother, whom I took to the movie with me. It was a big, emotional mistake. Story 41. My name is Khan. I could never forget how I cried a river when he kept on shouting, "My name is Khan, and I am not a terrorist." Story 42. The father crushed me because my father is starting to show some worrisome memory issues. Anthony Hopkins was incredible. On a less personal level, Dear Zachary is heartbreaking and I can't break even. I watched it twice. Story 43. My life. I was a young teenager at the time and do not remember anything about it other than sobbing inconsolably. Story 44. Instructions not included. No se aceptan devolutions. A Mexican movie that Netflix had under comedies. It was funny, but it was also a drama. The ending was emotional. They recategorized it a few weeks after I watched it. I was sobbing on my mother and hyperventilating. She made me get my inhaler. Story 45. The Lost Valentine with Elizabeth White. I have seen it hundreds of times and still cry every single time. Best movie ever. Story 46. Born Free and the sequel Living Free. I am crying now just remembering. It is about two brothers who raised an orphaned lion cub named Elsa. Story 47. I'm a big softie. So many things have brought on tears. However, the things that make me cry 100% of the time, no matter how many times I've seen them, are specific parts of Lord of the Rings. Forrest Gump when he meets his son and asks if he is like him while he is crying. That one gets me every time. Story 48. Nacho Libre. When Nacho was getting that epic beatdown from Ramses, Sister Encarnacion and the orphans showed up with Hombre Religioso playing in the background. I don't know, I cry every time I rewatch that scene. Story 49. Noah, 2014. When Jennifer Connelly gives that monologue about the babies, and then the Emma Watson scene afterward. Story 50. All of these movies that you are saying are good, some even great as crying movies. But perhaps you have forgotten about being a kid and watching Old Yeller. He was the best doggone dog in the West. Shame on you all. Story 51. Now is Good, Hatchie, and Crazy Rich Asians really hit home, as does Ander the television show. I suspect Jeanette McCurdy's upcoming book-to-movie adaptation will too, because I cried on every page of her book. Story 52. My Girl. Also, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, but that is because I lost my son when he was 2 weeks old, and I cannot handle seeing cardiopulmonary resuscitation performed now after walking into the hospital room while they were working on him. Story 53. Not to give away my age, but it was Sounder. As a kid, I can't bring myself to watch it again as an old man. Someday, maybe. Story 54. Honestly, for me, one of the saddest moments while watching it was the Iron Giant. The whole Superman scene, Jesus, it made me sad. Story 55. Sounder, Bambi, E.T., Sophie's Choice, 12 Years a Slave, Dark Victory, Sybil, every King Kong movie. I love a hairy ape. Story 56. I've cried at a few, but one that I always remember was Never-Ending Story when Artax sank in the mud. I watched it in the cinema with my younger cousin Lee. Story 57. I don't cry a lot, especially when it comes to movies. That being said, at the end of Blade Runner 2049, after Deckard goes into the building to see his daughter, and Kay sits down on the steps and starts looking up at the snow falling, Tears and Rain from the first Blade Runner started playing. I don't know. Someone was cutting onions in the theater or something. Story 58. Platoon, the final scene with Charlie Sheen. A day later, I bought the soundtrack on vinyl and played Adagio for strings repeatedly. Story 59. Armageddon, when Harry tells AJ he always thought of him as a son. Inside Out, when Bing Bong hops off the wagon. Warrior, the final scene when he is telling Tommy, I'm sorry. And when Nick Nolte falls off the wagon and starts drinking again. Story 60. It's hard for me to cry at movies or feel anything really when watching one. But in all my life there was one movie that actually made me cry so hard that even my wife was shocked when she saw me, as she is usually the one getting emotional when watching something. Radio, released in 2003, stars Cuba Gooding Jr. and Ed Harris. It is by far the only movie that will make me cry no matter how many times I watch it. Story 61. Imagine a bus full of 14-year-olds going home from an overnight school trip. One of the buses had televisions on the ceilings. Then they put Marley and Me in the DVD player. Now you have a bus full of crying 14-year-olds. Story 62. The Wind That Shakes the Barley. John Q. Amistad. What Dreams May Come. The Secret Scripture. There was also a movie that took me by surprise, and that is probably why it made me cry. It is called The Zookeeper's Wife. I had confused it with a lighthearted movie where silly people take over a zoo and everything works out in the end. It was not that, but it is worth a watch. Story 63. The opening of the movie Up made me sob like a baby in a theater full of actual babies who were handling it better than I was. Story 64. Hunchback of Notre Dame, when Quasi sings Heaven's Light. Even as a child, my eyes filled up with tears. As an adult, hearing him be so tentatively happy that someone was just basically nice to him for once breaks my heart. He has such a boost of confidence and hope. But suddenly an angel has smiled at me and touched my face without a trace of fright. I dare to dream that she might even care for me, and as I ring the bells tonight, my cold dark tower seems so bright. I swear it must be heaven's light. All dogs go to heaven. That movie is so good, but I have mixed feelings about it. Charlie B. Barkin, sure you will, kid. You know, goodbyes aren't forever. Emery. Then goodbye, Charlie. I love you. If I stay, specifically when her grandfather comes to talk to her. I rewatched it recently and it still got to me. It's a 2014 movie about a girl having an out-of-body experience after a car crash. The whole movie revolves around her and a boy who were opposites attract. But when the grandfather goes in and speaks to her comatose body in the intensive care unit, I want you to live. I want that more than anything in this world. I want you to fight like hell to stay with us. But with everybody else gone, I know it might not be what you want. It might be too hard for you to keep fighting, so if you want to go, I want you to know it's okay. It's okay. I understand. Story 65. Kinda a toss-up between Dear Zachary and the Iron Claw. The first is just so devastating emotionally that someone is capable of doing such awful things. The Iron Claw made me feel as though I was grieving the loss of something I have never experienced. A strong sense of belonging and brotherhood. Story 66. 17 Miracles. I know the Western pioneers struggled to get across the plains, but this movie was intense. Story 67. Sleepers. I sobbed in the theater and embarrassed myself and my girlfriend. It was a trigger. Story 68. The Green Mile. The injustice of what happens to John Coffey is absolutely devastating. The film does an incredible job of making you care for him, and his ultimate fate is soul-crushing. It is a long movie, but the emotional impact is powerful. Story 69. About Time. I am a red-headed man who went on family holidays to Cornwall. My father died suddenly at 59. If you have seen it, you will understand. Story 70. A Monster Calls. A young boy coping with his fears about losing his mother, who is battling cancer. I cried uncontrollably. Story 71. Not a movie but a show. Lucifer's last 2 episodes when he starts saying goodbye to everyone. I was sobbing. Story 72. Inside Out. I cried the hardest toward the end of the movie when Riley finally opened up to her parents and they all embraced. Story 73. All of Us Strangers. 2023. When Adam finds out Harry died alone the night he had dismissed him at his door. All this sadness could have been avoided by not giving in to fear. Story 74. Splendor in the Grass breaks my heart. Terms of Endearment, A Star is Born, and Anything by Tennessee Williams. Story 75. Dragonfly, 2002. I fully expected it to be another jump scare early 2000s horror movie. But I was not prepared to cry deeply and comfort myself by rocking and having to drink 3 glasses of water afterward because I was dehydrated from crying and blowing my nose. Story 76. If Dear Zachary does not end up as the top answer, I will be upset. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, I can still hear the scream in plastic bags. And wow, I discovered emotions I did not know were humanly possible with that film. Incredibly well made, nevertheless. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.